My name's Rob, and this is a place for you to share and gain insight on how to succeed and better serve more families in this rapidly changing marketplace. This is FDTV. With us today for our first episode, our President and CEO of Funeral Directors Life and Chief Visionary person, Kris Seale. Kris, thanks for being with us today. I wanted to you and I have talked several times about how, and in fact it's kind of a modus operandi for the entire company of how we all can help our funeral directors, help our clients, help our funeral home clients better serve families. And what are some observations that you've had recently?
Yeah, well first, Rob, thanks for having this idea for us to sit down and talk about some topics of the day or topics of the year, if it will be. But these are just situations and topics that I think are important for those of us in funeral service to discuss, to get them out on the table, to go over. And the discussion about the consumer and how the consumer's changed is something we've been talking about for probably 7 or 8 years now. It's been something that's been heavily on our mind, and that's why we have made the concerted effort at Funeral Directors Life to shift to more of a technology-driven company. That's been something that's been important to us because we see consumers who are now much more tech savvy. And even the older consumers are more tech savvy, the people we deal with, the senior citizens. That market that we deal with, I think there's a misperception that these people don't understand technology. But Rob, all of them have an iPhone or an Android, and all of them are on Facebook, or they're communicating through text message with their grandchildren. So we've seen the need for us in funeral service to step up our acumen, so to speak, in technology, because we think that our families, the people we work with, don't deal with technology. But that's wrong. That is completely wrong. So we are now in the process of having to adapt to what the new funeral consumer is looking at. And of course, people in their 50s and 60s who are making funeral arrangements for their mothers and fathers, of course they're plugged in to technology. Heck, I am one, I'm in my mid-50s, and I think it's important that we understand in the funeral profession that the families we're serving need and want and desire a different way of communicating with the funeral home. Because what we've seen in a study that was performed a few years ago, but I think it still applies today, and that is 63% of Americans do not like the way funeral homes communicate with them. That's number one. And what's worse, 48% of the people in the United States don't believe that funeral service is doing a good job for them. And that is shocking. And when I saw those statistics, what immediately came to me and came to our management team here at Funeral Directors Life, we've got to make a change, because the consumers of today are seeing things on their phone, getting their information over their internet, getting information from websites that we know don't have a connection to the value of our profession. Our profession brings value to families who are hurting and in need. And if families are getting information from sources that portray funeral service in a bad way, or talk all about price and price only, not the value of a meaningful and healing funeral, that's a problem. And so people are seeing that, and that's what people look at before they come into the funeral home. Rob, I talk to funeral home owners all the time, and what I've seen in the reaction that they get is they're concerned, because they say that the majority of the families, when they sit down with them face-to-face in an arrangement conference, the first thing they want to talk about is price. And my question back is, why? It's because they have heard through the internet, they have heard through websites that they've visited, they've heard as they've Googled things, they've Googled, I'm about to plan a funeral for my mom or dad. What do I need to do? Or I'm thinking about planning a funeral and I'm needing some advice. I mean, these are the things they're Googling. They're not Googling XYZ funeral home and looking at their website. They're trying to find out all the information they can about the process of planning a funeral. The reason they are doing this is because how many times a year, Rob, do you think, or not a year, how many times in a person's lifetime do you think they plan a funeral?
Not very often.
I would say 1 or 2 times. An average person would make funeral arrangements for a loved one. And what shocks me is that we in the funeral profession believe that the families actually know what to do or have some understanding of what's going to be happening in a funeral arrangement. And they have no idea. They have absolutely no idea. So it's incumbent upon our profession to do a better job of educating that funeral consumer about the value of what we do. I mean, both in pre-arrangement and in at-need. It's important for us in funeral service to understand that families don't know about funerals. They don't know what they want. They don't know what the options are. And it's incumbent upon us in the profession to explain those options, explain them clearly, and give the family options. Because again, when they go on the internet and they're Googling these things that I talked about, they're getting bad information. We want them to have good information. That's exactly why we developed funeralbasics.org, is because it is just an information hub. And man, Rob, that has been gaining a lot of attention throughout 2018. It started out small with only a few thousand visitors each month, to where December we had over 35,000 visitors, unique visitors to funeralbasics.org. That shows me that people are hungry and they desire information, they desire education on funeral service.
And that's one of the things that I find fascinating with funeralbasics.org and is the fact that it's not a commercial for funeral business.
Right.
What it is more of a resource so that people can get access to more information than only what's been paid for by somebody who's advertising on Google.
Exactly.
Because people are, like you said, they're getting their information online. Some of them are primarily getting their information online.
Right.
They're having to do it quickly.
Right.
So, we have this self-help type of society that wants to heal itself and fix itself and address its own do-it-yourself type problems. But we're in a profession where that can't necessarily be done, especially if you are coming to this experience having never done it before.
Right.
So you need to be able to trust a professional. Chris, one of the things that I've noticed about our space, our funeral service space, is the fact that because of this change, there's fear. The professionals in the industry they're living in a little bit of fear of anticipation of, what does all this change mean?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
What I see in talking to funeral home owners across the nation is there is a fear or a concern that they are going to be taken out of the equation as we move more and more toward technology, that there's a fear that there won't be the need to have a funeral service professional take care of things and take care of the arrangements and meet face to face. And Rob, I'm just telling you, that's wrong. There's always going to be the need for somebody to handle that. I mean, for example, you would not even think about planning a wedding without having some kind of wedding planner, that you could rely on the information, that you could rely on their advice. So so it's not even a question. And you think about that. You only plan maybe one, some people maybe 2 or 3 weddings in a person's lifetime, and they want to plan those appropriately. So they want to go to a professional to get help. And you wouldn't even think of a wedding planner saying, okay, so what do you want? And you could get some ideas about what they want, but if they say, gosh, I don't understand, this is the first time I've been through this process, then the wedding planner is going to say, let me give you some suggestions, some ideas, some things I've seen before. And so this is a way that the funeral professional, when they're dealing with a family, can become more consultative. And I think that's what's going to be important, is that the funeral director, there is a reason why the word director is in funeral director. It's to give direction. And I think sometimes funeral professionals forget that they're there to give some direction, to be consultative with families that they serve.
I agree with you 100% because that direction that they do give often ends up being a question-answer thing.
Right.
And they're not doing that. Consultative approach needs to be anticipatory. They need to draw from their body of experience
Sure.
in order to really serve that family and see the questions that aren't being asked.
Sure. The situation is that I think we in funeral service, we have some fear that families will not appreciate our advice, or that when they come in and talk about price, that's all they're thinking about. When in fact that's wrong. That's all they've been told about when they go to the internet, when they go to different websites that really bash funeral service rather than promoting the value of what we bring. And I think more than ever, people want options and they're willing to pay to get value. So the important thing for us in funeral service is creating value. Because Rob, my dad used to tell me years ago, he said, there is no better advertisement for funeral service than a great funeral. And to this day, I believe that.
I believe that too. Let's talk a little bit about the opportunities that we have coming up here, because, you know, I spend a lot of time in funeral homes. I mean, I've probably been in 100 funeral homes and talked to 300 funeral directors this year.
Yeah.
A real common thing right now is succession planning. There are a lot of next generation funeral home owners that are coming up, and you talk to funeral home owners who are like, you know, their sons they're thinking about what happens, and again, those guys are the ones that are the men and women are the ones that are a little bit concerned about the future, but there is tremendous opportunity. Talk about the opportunity.
Yeah, there is no question there's opportunity. You know, Rob, I look at statistics a lot. I'm an accountant by nature, so I'm looking at numbers a lot. And so I went out recently and looked at some information from the Census Bureau. And what it's showing me is this concept we've been talking about a while of the aging of the baby boomers. It's happening. It's happening like we thought it would, finally. But for example, from 2012 to 2030, there's going to be a 69% increase in the number of people 65 and older from 2012 to 2030. We'll see a 69% increase in that number of people. That, to me, shows there is more need for funeral professionals, not a less of a need for funeral professionals. I mean, there's a lot of things surrounding the changing of what the preferences are by families, whether they have cremation or traditional type funeral. I don't think anymore that's really an issue. I think that's an issue of disposition. I think the issue is how can we do a better job of giving people better information and education, as I've talked about. If we can give better information, better education, I think that those people, those baby boomers who've changed history throughout the movement of their years, they have changed history with the things that they've done. And I believe those same baby boomers are the ones who will bring this change to funeral service as well. But we, in the profession, have got to have enough wisdom to see what's going on. I mean, where are people's eyes these days, Rob?
They're on their phones.
They're on their phones. I mean, you go anywhere. You're in line at the grocery store. You go get your car washed. You're sitting at the car wash. You're even at a sports event, and it's a timeout. And I'm looking around, and everybody's got their phone out, checking out, you know, what their email or text messages or what's something going on Facebook or Snapchat or any of those new things that are out there from social media standpoint. They're checking those things out. And if I'm looking around and seeing people doing that, then they're going to be looking at things for funeral service too, because that's where they go. So what can we do? And this is what we're exploring, this idea, this concept. What can we do so that we can get to where people's eyes are? That's what we've got to do, because we've got to start sending the positive message about what we offer. I am so angry at all the negative messages about funeral service. You know, all the disruption, so to speak, that's going on in our profession. And you know, that gets into our society as a whole. Things are so divisive. You know, it's either really, really good or really, really bad, and there's not much in between. You know, I think that's an issue as well, and I think that's going on in our society. So However, in funeral service, what I see is the places where I go, where my eyes go, there's so much bad talked about. We have not done, I say this all the time to funeral home owners. We have done a very poor job over the years of promoting the value of what we do. And I'm just as much to blame as anyone. I mean, I kept waiting for somebody else to step up. I kept wanting somebody else to step up in order to start promoting this positive nature of what we do. I mean, to my dad, being a funeral service profession was honorable. You know, it wasn't something that was about price. It wasn't something that families came in and were, argumentative about funeral service. It was, to him, a ministry. To him, it was an honorable profession. To me, it's the same way. That hasn't changed. I mean, that is a precept that all of us in funeral service need to grasp, is that we are involved in an honorable profession, not a profession that's based on just getting by, not a profession that's going to take it whenever we're seeing all the negative that comes across from different websites and through the internet and information that's out there, through all the pricing. I mean, we're always going to have price sensitive people, but we're always going to have also vendors or providers of funerals who are going to be priced. That's always been around. We've just got to learn to get to where they are and start talking about the positive nature of what we do, and that is going to where the eyes of the people are. And I think that is a critical thing that we've got to get involved in, and we've got to get involved fast.
So in the spirit of this program, I know that you've got a few things that you've kind of identified as some goals for moving forward into 2019.
I think it's important, Rob, that all of us in the profession, as I've talked about, that we figure out a better way of communicating with our new funeral consumer. I think that is a critical point. That I talked to a funeral home owner the other day. He gave me a call, actually, and he said, "Kris, I get it." And I said, "What are you talking about? You get what?" He said, "I get it. All this stuff you've been talking to me about over the past 2 or 3 years, I get it." And I still said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He says, "I just had a family that I was working with. He's in a small community. And he said, I was communicating with 4 siblings of the mom who passed away, and they all lived all over the United States. And I was having trouble communicating with them. I was having to text all 4 of them. I was having to, this one wanted to know this information. This one would call me. This one would text me. This one would email me. And I was having to plan this funeral service with text message, email, and phone calls because they couldn't get here. They couldn't get here timely. They couldn't get here all together. So we were trying to work this out all by this. So I get this idea of needing to communicate with families differently. It's kind of fun to see that he did get it, that we do need to change the way we communicate with the families that we serve, and that's so important. Second, Rob, as we've been thinking through these things, is we need to free up the funeral homeowner's time also, so that the funeral home owner and the funeral directors can have more time to spend with families in order to plan that meaningful and healing funeral. I talked earlier about the funeral director who was just asking questions of the family, trying to see what they wanted.
Order taking,
so to speak. Yeah. Well, the thing about providing more options and to provide more information and to give examples, that takes time. And so, if there are ways in which that funeral homes can work with vendors who can help them to provide them more time to be more consultative with families, that's just going to help them provide that education, because that's my third thing, the education that these families need to plan a meaningful and healing funeral service. And I think that's what every funeral director is looking for. I've never been to a funeral where things went perfectly. That's number one. But I've been to lots of funerals where things were spoken, things were arranged, things were taken care of, to the point that when people got up to speak, that when the music occurred, that when the videos were played and such, that the entire group of people who were attending the funeral were moved. You know, and that's what we need to see more of, because that's what drives funeral directors. You said it earlier, the hugs that funeral directors get is what drives them. The love and appreciation they have for the service they're providing is what drives them, not the money. You know, and that's the whole key to what we're talking about, is how can we communicate better with the families we serve? How can we provide more time to be more consultative with the families we serve, at need and pre-need? I'm not just talking about the at-need funeral process, but pre-need as well. We've got to provide the time to give options on the pre-need basis as well. But all of this is based around the third point, which is educating and providing plenty of information to families as they seek it. Because all of us are going to the same places to try to gain information and education. I mean, I'm a Google maniac. My wife will tell you. She always says, Kris, you need to go to your smartphone and see what that answer is. You know, that's what people do these days. And in particular, they do it on things they're not familiar with, or things that they do very infrequently, or maybe only a few times in their lifetime. They're going to want to have more information so that when they come into a funeral arrangement process, that they feel like they know more about the process or what's about to happen. We've just got to be the ones providing them that information.
Well, Kris, I'm excited about the future. I think 2019 is going to be super great, and I'm excited about this program, this opportunity to visit with you. And you know, in future episodes, I plan to have other funeral professionals on here speaking about all of the different other aspects of funeral business. But I'd like to encourage anybody who's watching today to feel free to click on the links below. We want your feedback. We want to cover things that you guys want to know about and want to learn more about. And we just want to encourage this an interactive environment moving forward. You guys have any comments, let us know. Thanks for watching.